Manhattan, Upper East Side. The 3-year-old twin sons of Marcus Williams, night janitor at a Fortune 500 tech company, had never walked. Ethan and Noah, diagnosed with a rare neurological condition, had been turned away by every specialist Marcus could afford. Verdict: they'd need surgeries costing hundreds of thousands, with no guarantee of success. Marcus worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and spent every free moment moving his son's legs in patterns his grandmother from Louisiana had taught him. Ancient movements she swore could wake up sleeping muscles. He thought he was alone in the executive floor at 2 a.m. when he laid his boys on the conference table, singing old spirituals while moving their legs like they were dancing. But Sarah Chen, the company's billionaire CEO working late, saw everything through the glass walls. When she witnessed both boys' legs responding, actually pushing back against their father's hands, she realized this janitor possessed something her money couldn't buy. What she did next changed not just the twins' destiny, but the entire landscape of pediatric therapy in America. The gleaming towers of Chen Technologies pierced the Manhattan skyline like monuments to innovation. But for Marcus Williams, they were simply the place where he mopped floors to keep his boys alive. Every night at 10 p.m., after his day job at the warehouse and his evening shift at the grocery store, Marcus arrived with his twins in their specialized stroller, parking them in the janitor's break room while he cleaned offices that cost more per square foot than he made in a year. Ethan and Noah, 3 years old with their mother's bright eyes and their father's determined chin, had been born 8 weeks premature. Complications during delivery, a cord wrapped around Ethan's neck, oxygen deprivation for Noah, had left both boys with severe motor neuron damage. The doctors at the free clinic had been blunt. Without intensive therapy and likely multiple surgeries, the boys would never walk. The estimated cost had made Marcus laugh bitterly. $300,000 minimum might as well have been $3 million to a man living paycheck to paycheck. But Marcus had something the doctors didn't count on: the memory of his grandmother, Big Mama Williams, who'd been known throughout the 9th Ward of New Orleans as a healer. Not with medicine or surgery, but with movements passed down through generations, originally from enslaved ancestors who'd hidden African healing practices within acceptable Christian spirituals. She'd taught young Marcus the patterns before she died, making him promise to remember even though he'd thought it was just old folklore. That night in October, the building was supposed to be empty, except for security. Sarah Chen's divorce had just finalized, and she'd buried herself in work to avoid going home to an empty penthouse. At 2 a.m., she heard something unusual, singing, deep and resonant, coming from the executive conference room. She approached silently, her designer heels muffled by thick carpet, and what she saw through the glass walls stopped her cold. Marcus had laid both boys on the Brazilian mahogany conference table, their tiny bodies cushioned by the yellowed quilts he'd brought from home. He was moving their legs in complex patterns while singing a spiritual she didn't recognize, his voice carrying a pain and hope that made her chest tighten. But it wasn't just the emotional weight that froze her. It was what she was seeing. The boys' legs, supposedly paralyzed, were showing micro-movements. When Marcus would lift and rotate their knees, their feet would flex slightly. When he pressed their soles together, their thighs would tense almost imperceptibly. As someone who'd invested millions in biotech startups, Sarah understood what she was witnessing defied conventional medicine. She pulled out her phone and recorded, not to invade privacy, but because she recognized something extraordinary. The patterns Marcus traced weren't random. They followed a sophisticated understanding of muscle groups and nerve pathways that would make orthopedic surgeons take notice. After 20 minutes, Marcus carefully dressed the boys in their pajamas, kissing each on the forehead. "Your muscles are just sleeping, not broken," he whispered. "Big Mama said sleeping things can wake up if you sing the right songs." He turned to place them back in their stroller and found himself face to face with Sarah Chen. The blood drained from his face. He'd be fired, lose his health insurance, the tiny apartment in Queens. But Sarah raised a hand. "How long have you been doing this?" she asked quietly. "Every night for 2 years," Marcus answered, his voice steady despite his fear. "Started the day the Medicaid doctor said surgery was the only option." Sarah looked at the twins, now awake and studying her with curious eyes. She made a decision that would later seem inevitable, but in that moment felt like stepping off a cliff. "Bring them to my office tomorrow at noon. Not to clean, to show me more." Marcus wanted to explain he had his warehouse shift at noon, but something in her eyes stopped him. It wasn't pity or charity. It was the look of someone who recognized treasure hidden in unexpected places. The next day, Marcus lost his warehouse job for missing his shift, but he kept the appointment. Sarah had assembled a small team. Dr. James Patterson from Mount Sinai's neurology department, a physical therapist who specialized in pediatric paralysis, and, surprisingly, an ethnomusicologist from Colombia who studied healing traditions. For 3 hours, they watched Marcus work with his sons. He showed them the full sequence, 37 specific movement patterns, each accompanied by different songs, some in English, some in Creole, some in languages that predated written history. The medical team took notes furiously. The boys' responses were undeniable. Not full movement, but clear neurological activity in supposedly dead zones. Dr. Patterson was the first to speak. I've never seen anything like this. The movements are stimulating nerve pathways we thought were permanently damaged. And the music, the frequencies might be acting as a kind of neural tuning fork." Sarah had already made up her mind. "Marcus, I'm offering you a new position. Full-time therapy coordinator for a pilot program we're launching immediately. Your salary will be $150,000 a year, full benefits, and we're covering all medical costs for the boys. Your only job is to do what you've been doing, but with a full medical team supporting you." Marcus's knees nearly buckled. "Why?" was all he could manage. Sarah's expression softened for the first time. "Because you've been performing miracles at 2 a.m. on a conference table with no resources, but love and ancestral wisdom. Imagine what you could do with actual support." 6 weeks into the program, the changes were undeniable. The twins had been moved to a specialized suite at Mount Sinai, where Marcus continued his treatments under medical observation. Brain scans showed increasing activity in motor cortex regions. Ethan had begun pushing against resistance. Noah was lifting his legs slightly during the sessions. But it was Marcus himself who became the subject of intense study. "Doctor?" Patterson discovered that Marcus had perfect pitch and an intuitive understanding of frequency healing that PhD researchers were only beginning to map. The songs weren't random. Each one operated at specific hertz frequencies known to stimulate cellular repair. The movements weren't just exercise. They followed developmental patterns that mirrored how babies naturally learn to move in the womb. Sarah found herself attending every session, ostensibly to monitor her investment, but increasingly drawn to Marcus himself. She watched him work with a dedication that reminded her why she'd started her company. Not for wealth, but to change lives. He never complained about the 12 researchers documenting his every move, never showed frustration when progress was slow, never lost faith that his boys would walk. One evening, after a particularly intense session where Noah had managed to bend his knee voluntarily for the first time, Sarah found Marcus on the hospital roof garden, tears streaming down his face. "Big Mama should be here," he said simply. "She knew this would work. Died 2 months before the boys were born, but she knew. Told me I'd need the songs one day." Sarah sat beside him, Manhattan glittering below. "Tell me about her." Marcus smiled through his tears. "Josephine Williams. Born in 1925 in rural Louisiana. Her grandmother had been brought from Senegal as a slave, but she kept the old ways alive, hidden in spirituals and church hymns. Big Mama learned that the body holds memory in its muscles, that trauma locks joints, but rhythm can unlock them. She helped kids with polio in the 40s, before the vaccine. The white doctors called her a witch, but parents brought their children anyway, when nothing else worked. The movements aren't random, are they? Sarah asked. Each one mirrors how babies move in amniotic fluid. Big Mama said we all know how to move before we're born. Sometimes we just forget. The songs remind the body of what it knows. Sarah made another decision. I want to document everything. Not just for the boys, but for thousands of children who could benefit. Will you let me fund a full research center? Marcus looked at her. This billionaire in designer clothes sitting on a hospital roof, mascara slightly smudged from her own tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. Why do you care so much? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. My brother had cerebral palsy. Died when he was 7. We had all the money in the world, the best doctors, but nothing helped. Watching you with your boys, it's like seeing the treatment that could have saved him. 2 weeks later, Ethan stood for 3 seconds while holding Marcus's hands. The medical team erupted in celebration, but Marcus just kept singing, tears running down his face as his son's legs held weight they'd never held before. Noah, not to be outdone by his twin, pulled himself up using the parallel bars the next day. The videos went viral within the medical community. Families flew in from around the world. Marcus tried to teach other therapists, but something was missing when others attempted the movements. It wasn't just the technical execution. It was the belief, the ancestral connection, the love that couldn't be replicated in clinical settings. 3 months later, the twins were taking tentative steps with walkers. The conference room where Marcus had secretly worked his midnight miracles had been converted into a shrine of sorts. Families would touch the table for luck before their children's therapy sessions. Marcus had moved from his Queens apartment to a brownstone in Brooklyn that Sarah insisted was part of his compensation package. The research center, named the Josephine Williams Institute for Movement Therapy, occupied an entire floor of Chen technologies. 30 children were enrolled in the pilot program, each showing improvements that challenged medical orthodoxy. Marcus worked with each family, teaching not just movements, but the philosophy behind them. That healing came from believing the body remembered wholeness. Sarah attended every session she could, initially claiming she needed to oversee the investment. But everyone noticed how she looked at Marcus, how her hand would linger on his shoulder, how she'd unconsciously hum the spirituals even in board meetings. Marcus felt it too, but kept professional distance. She was his boss, his boy's savior, untouchable. The breakthrough came during a late-night session. A new patient, a girl named Aisha, whose parents had flown her from Morocco, wasn't responding to treatment. Marcus was exhausted. The boys were fussy, and for the first time, he felt his faith wavering. Sarah found him in the break room at midnight, head in his hands. Without words, she took his hand and led him back to Aisha's room. "Show me the movements," she said. "Let me help." Together, they worked through the patterns, Sarah's hands following Marcus's guidance. When their hands touched, moving Aisha's tiny legs in rhythm.
Enjoying the story? Give it a little like, and don't forget to subscribe. Now then, let's carry on.
Something electric passed between them. And impossibly, Aisha's legs began responding. The child who hadn't shown any progress in 2 weeks suddenly flexed her toes. "It's the connection," Marcus whispered in wonder. "Big Mama said healing multiplies when hearts align." Sarah looked at him, her corporate armor completely dissolved. "Marcus, I know," he said softly. "But you're you, and I'm the man who's revolutionizing pediatric therapy, the father who refused to give up, the person who makes me want to be better than quarterly earnings reports." Sarah interrupted. "Marcus, I've built companies, made billions, but watching you with these children, that's the real power." The Marcus method, as the media had dubbed it despite his protests, had evolved beyond the institute. Sarah had purchased an abandoned church in Harlem, transforming it into a community center where Marcus held free sessions for families who couldn't afford the institute. Every Saturday, hundreds gathered. Children in wheelchairs, parents carrying hope like fragile glass, elderly volunteers who remembered their own big mamas with similar gifts. Ethan and Noah, now walking with just slight limps, became the center's mascots. They'd demonstrate movements for newer children, their progress proof that Miracles wore work clothes and showed up every day. The twins had started calling Sarah Mama Chen, which she pretended was just childish affection, but which made her heart race every time. The medical establishment remained divided. Traditional orthopedic surgeons called it pseudoscience, but neurologists were documenting unprecedented neural pathway regeneration. The NIH approved a $20 million study. Marcus remained focused on the children, leaving the politics to Sarah, who wielded her influence like a sword against skeptics. One evening, after a particularly emotional session where a child took her first steps in 5 years, Sarah found Marcus on the church's roof, looking out over Harlem. The city hummed below, but up here, there was peace. "My divorce was because I couldn't have children," Sarah said suddenly. "The treatments, the failures, it broke us." Marcus took her hand. "You have hundreds of children now. Every kid who walks because of this program is partly yours. But not the same as—" She stopped, looking at Ethan and Noah playing on the rooftop playground they'd installed. "Sarah Chen," Marcus said formally, surprising her. "Would you like to have dinner with the janitor and his 2 boys? Not as CEO and employee, but as us?" Her answer was to kiss him, there on the rooftop with Harlem as witness, while the twins cheered and the city lights blessed what had been building since that first night in the conference room. Spring arrived in New York with unusual warmth, and with it came the official opening of 3 new Marcus Method Centers in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Atlanta. Marcus had spent months training facilitators, though he insisted each develop their own songs, their own connection to ancestral healing. The movements could be taught, but the spirit had to be cultivated. The twins were now indistinguishable from any other 5-year-olds, running through Central Park with boundless energy. Ethan had joined a little league team, while Noah showed remarkable musical talent, particularly with drums and rhythm. Watching them play, no one would guess they'd been told they'd never walk. Sarah had restructured her entire company, dedicating 50% of profits to the institutes. Board members who protested were reminded that stock prices had tripled since the program launched. Apparently, America loved billionaires with hearts. She'd moved from her sterile penthouse to the Brooklyn brownstone next to Marcus's, though the pretense of separate residences fooled no one. The moment of truth came at the annual gala for the Josephine Williams Institute. 500 attendees, including Nobel laureates, celebrity supporters, and 50 children who'd benefited from the program. Marcus was supposed to give the keynote, but he'd been anxious all week. When he took the stage, the twins by his side, the room fell silent. But instead of speaking to the crowd, Marcus turned to Sarah in the front row. "Sarah Chen," he began, his voice carrying the same resonance as when he sang to his boys. "You saw a janitor stealing time on a conference table and chose to see magic instead of trespassing. You took 3 broken hearts and gave us hope. You've turned my grandmother's wisdom into a movement that's healing thousands." He dropped to one knee, pulling out not a diamond but a simple band made from Louisiana cypress, the wood Big Mama had used for her healing sticks. "Will you marry a man whose only wealth is love and ancient songs?" Sarah was on stage before he finished, tears streaming. "Only if you'll marry a woman whose greatest achievement isn't her company, but learning to believe in miracles." The room erupted. The twins jumped between them, chanting, "Mama Chen's gonna be Mama Williams." The standing ovation lasted 10 minutes, but Marcus and Sarah only saw each other. 2 souls who'd found harmony in the most unlikely circumstances. Dr. Patterson later said the energy in that room could have powered the healing of 100 children. He wasn't entirely wrong. 3 children in attendance showed spontaneous improvement in their conditions that night. as if joy itself was medicine. 2 years after that first midnight encounter in the conference room, the Marcus method had become a global phenomenon. The flagship center in Manhattan occupied a renovated hospital, with gardens designed around sensory healing and movement spaces that looked more like dance studios than therapy rooms. The conference table from Chen Technologies had been moved there, preserved under glass, with a plaque reading, "Where miracles clock in for the night shift." Ethan and Noah, now 7, were typical second graders, playing soccer, complaining about homework, getting in trouble for trading Pokemon cards during class. Their only difference was their unusual empathy for anyone struggling with mobility. They'd become junior counselors at the center, teaching younger children the movements their father had taught them, passing on Big Mama's legacy to a new generation. The wedding had been held in the Harlem church, with 500 children as guests of honor. Many came in wheelchairs or walkers, but by the end of the celebration, dozens were attempting steps they hadn't tried before, as if the joy was contagious. Marcus sang the vows in the same spiritual style he used for healing, while Sarah's vows included quarterly projections for their love, increasing returns with no market ceiling. But the real miracle was baby Josephine, born exactly 9 months after the wedding. From birth, she moved differently, her tiny limbs following the patterns Marcus had taught, as if she'd absorbed them in the womb. By 6 months, she was standing. By 10 months, walking. Doctors studied her obsessively, but Marcus just smiled. She heard the songs before she was born. Her muscles never learned to forget. The institute now operated in 17 countries. Marcus had trained over 300 practitioners, each required to spend 6 months learning not just the movements, but the philosophy. Healing comes from believing the body remembers wholeness, from connecting to ancestral wisdom, from love that sees possibility where medicine sees limitation. Sarah had stepped back from day-to-day operations of Chen Technologies, focusing on the institutes. She'd learned Marcus's songs, could perform the movements herself, and had developed her own gift for seeing which children would respond to which approaches. Together, they'd published papers that were reshaping pediatric neurology, though Marcus insisted on including Big Mama as lead author posthumously. The 5th anniversary celebration brought together 2,000 children who'd been helped by the program. The event was held in Madison Square Garden, transformed into a massive sensory playground. As Marcus took the stage with his family, Sarah glowing with their second pregnancy, the twins now teaching movements to other children, baby Josephine toddling with preternatural grace, the crowd fell silent. 5 years ago, Marcus began, I was a janitor who thought he was alone at 2 a.m., trying to wake up my boys' sleeping muscles with songs my grandmother taught me. I had no money, no hope except what Big Mama put in my heart. Then Sarah Chen saw something worth believing in. He looked at the crowd, filled with children who'd been told they'd never walk, now dancing. Every person here proves what Big Mama knew. The body holds memories of wholeness. Sometimes trauma makes us forget, but rhythm and love can help us remember. My boys remembered. Your children remembered. We all can remember. Sarah joined him, taking his hand. The real miracle isn't the walking, she said. It's that one man's midnight faith became thousands of morning victories. It's that ancestral wisdom hidden in spirituals is now documented in medical journals. It's that love plus science equals possibilities we haven't even imagined yet. The twins grabbed the microphone. We want to say something, Ethan announced. Kids who can't walk yet, don't give up. Our daddy sang to our legs every night, even when doctors said it wouldn't work. Now we play soccer, Noah added. And if you see someone cleaning late at night, be nice. They might be doing miracles when nobody's watching. The crowd erupted in laughter and tears. As 2,000 voices joined Marcus in singing Big Mama's favorite spiritual, children all over the arena began moving, some taking first steps, others simply swaying, but all feeling the rhythm of possibility. Later, as the family walked home through Central Park, baby Josephine on Marcus's shoulders and the twins racing ahead, Sarah asked, "Did you ever imagine this?" Marcus smiled, thinking of Big Mama, of midnight conference room sessions, of the moment a billionaire chose to believe in a janitor's grandmother's songs. Big Mama did. She said the songs would travel farther than she ever could. She just didn't mention they'd need a tech CEO's conference table to launch from. The CNN documentary titled The Janitor's Miracle would win 3 Emmys, but it could never fully capture the daily miracles. Children defying diagnoses, parents finding hope, a medical establishment slowly accepting that healing could come from sources they'd never thought to measure. It couldn't show Marcus still waking at 2 a.m. sometimes, checking on his sleeping children, whispering thanks to Big Mama and to the woman who'd seen miracles where others saw only mops and buckets. The Josephine Williams Institute's motto, inscribed in marble at every location, captured it all. Healing happens when ancient wisdom meets modern love, when midnight faith meets morning resources, when someone believes your muscles are just sleeping, not broken. And in conference rooms around the world, janitors working late would sometimes pause, remembering the story of Marcus Williams, wondering what miracles they might be carrying in their own forgotten songs. Hit, like if you believe miracles can happen in the midnight hours when no one's watching. Comment with the moment that touched your heart the most. Share with someone who needs to know that their struggles might be the prelude to their triumph. Subscribe for more stories that prove destiny sometimes wears a janitor's uniform and shows up at 2 a.m. Because in the end, what the millionaire saw wasn't just a janitor doing something incredible. She saw that sometimes the poorest among us carry the richest wisdom, that ancestral knowledge can unlock what modern medicine cannot, and that love working the night shift can wake up more than just sleeping muscles. It can wake up hope in places that had forgotten how to dream.